Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining again. I want to do a quick video that is a different take on something that you've maybe seen in a video that Salias Pavalkis has put out recently in his MBSE execution channel, and it's about using signals and sending signals and using some of the attributes of those signals with state transitions. So what you'll notice in this simple architecture is that we have a domain, there's an operator that will be sending a signal to the system, and then that system will have a state machine that looks like this, and that state machine will essentially receive a signal to transition from the off to the cooling state, and then it will have an entry behavior, and that entry behavior is what we will use to read the attribute of that signal and update its property. So looking at this, what you notice is that the signal or the message that we'll be sending is defined by this block, but it has an attribute that is called data, which is a string. But really, this is a reference property of the operator, and you could think that could be some external system as well. It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to say that a person could send that discrete message, but let's just say, for instance, this is an external system sending something to another system. What we could do is then use that reference property and grab that with an opaque action that you'll see in a moment, and then update the system's reference property with the data down at this level. And we'll do that using the signal. So the signal will carry that data. Think of the signal as somewhat of an envelope that carries things along with it. We can use that signal to trigger the event of the state, but then also, or to trigger the transition of that state. But then also we can grab the data along with that, and we do that by using something like this. So if you see here, we have this operator that will be responding to us saying to send the command. So when I send a signal, it'll actually use this opaque action here. And the opaque action is actually grabbing that reference property with this lowercase command. So that is actually this reference property here, because this is a directed association. So if you were to soft delete this for a moment without deleting it from your model, what you'll notice is that's a reference property typed by this block. So the name of it is command with the lowercase. You drag that out, you see that it simply looks like that in a different way. But what we can do with the opaque action is grab that, and then it'll take everything along with it. So if there were a lot of other values with this block, all of that would be encapsulated with this one reference property. So what we can do is actually grab that and then send these signals. This is a send signal action named command because it's referencing the name of that signal, and it sends it via port P1, which is this port here. It will traverse the connector, and then that will trigger this state change using that command trigger. But then we have the entry behavior of save operator command, which is this activity that's being performed by the system. And if you notice, we have an input activity parameter node that is named data typed by a string. So it will be pulling in that field or that attribute of the signal, but then we need to read that with either a read structural feature value action, which is what this is, to read that field, or you could use an ALH command such as a get value as well. But then it's interesting here because you can also update the system's command property by using the ALH set value command. So ALH.set value of its property, so of the block executing this, its property that's named command, and then its property named data, we set that to whatever shows up in this port that is named X. And that will be whatever data we send it. So then what we can do is execute all of this. And when we use the simulation configuration, what I've done is set up a little graphical user interface as well that we can use to input some of this data. So if you notice, there's a frame here using the user interface modeling diagram, and then a group box that's typed by the part property of the operator of this domain, and then also a group box with the system part property, and then another lower level group box that's typed by that reference property named command, and then you now have access to that block and all of its fields. So this is a label, this is a text box here, and what we can do when we play this, if you'll notice, the operator is simply sitting here listening for that signal, which you can send from the operator perspective here with this send signal action. Essentially, it's the ability to send that signal from your graphical user interface. Then we can type in, so let's say something like this, start cooling, and then I'll press enter. So that is accepted there. But then our operator is still listening for this command. So what I can do is now send that signal. It grabs the entire reference property that has all of that data now associated with it, sends it via that port across the connector. It's used for the state transition, but then we also read the data from the attribute that says start cooling, and then it updates in this new context. So let's say we wanted to go ahead and turn the system back off. We can go to the system here, send the off signal, and then do that same thing over again. Maybe we'll enter some other data, such as or something like that, and then we can send that signal again. But before we do that, let's look at what the current runtime values are. So for the operator, runtime value is system error, and that's what you're seeing here. But the system's runtime value for that same property is start cooling. So what we can do now is send the command here. It grabs that new updated value for the command, sends that same signal with different data this time, uses it for the transition, reads that property, and then it will update that in a new context. So now you see the data is now system error, and that's reflected in both the graphical user interface and the variables pane down here of your simulation dialog. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Thanks.